Hello everyone. Today I am here to recommend to you some spooky books that are perfect for this month. So obviously Halloween is coming up, and I don't know about you, but during the months of September and October I like to read kind of dark, atmospheric, spooky books, books that somewhat frighten me. I will say I'm not the biggest horror person or scary person because I am a big scaredy cat, but I have definitely grown in the past few years and have read some more scarier things, so I have more books to recommend now more than ever that are perfect to read near Halloween that give you that spook factor. I'll tell you ones that I think that are easy for people like me that are scaredy cats, and some that are really, really scary. But either way, all these books I'm mentioning today are perfect to read this month, perfect to read near Halloween in the darkness of night with a candle and, under a blanket in case you get scared, those kind of feelings. I do want to talk about a YA book, and that is Horrified by Katrina Lena. I read this a couple years ago and really enjoyed it. I think it's classified as a YA horror, and it definitely is very creepy. It's a perfect book to read this month. It's a really kind of creepy, disturbing book, if you will. So in this book we have a character named Jane, and Jane's father passes away, and her mom really don't know what to do. And so they decide to go back to Jane's mom's hometown in Maine, and more specifically back to the house that Jane's mom grew up in, and her grandmother used to live there. She has since passed away, and it's kind of an old dilapidated house. In fact, even on the back of this shows you the house, so I'll show you kind of how creepy it is. Yeah, it's like a creepy house that's, has a lot of boarded up windows, things like that. And so things are just kind of odd, Jane's noticing maybe the house is kind of haunted. Her mom's also acting really strange, and she's never really known anything about her mom's past, but as more time goes on, they're in the house, things start coming to fruition. So it's a really creepy book, not super creepy because it is YA, but it's a perfect one to read, and it's a perfect one to read near Halloween, obviously. And the last YA book I want to recommend is Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. I read this again a few years ago. I don't have a copy of it anymore, but I vaguely remember about it, and I remember there were some scenes in it that I was like, this is really creepy. So basically you have a character, and she's been on the hunt for her sister for years because there's this path in these woods that comes open every year. They call it kind of like a cursed path, and her sister went on this path a few years ago and has never come back. So our character is really obsessed with trying to find this path again because she knows it's going to lead to her sister. So what do you know? It's about that time of the year where the path opens up again. She decides to go on it, and some other people decide to go on it with her. And there are strict rules for when you're on this path. You can't veer from the path, you can't look at certain things, or bad things will happen to you. And it gets creepy really fast. It's definitely a very interesting book. I didn't love how the ending came, but I really enjoyed it. In fact, there's a new Kate Alice Marshall book that I just bought on Kindle that I really want to read called These Fleeting Shadows. That's more about a haunted house. I don't know if I'll have time to read it this month, but she writes some real creepy stuff that's perfect for Halloween. Moving into adult thrillers, horror, just books that are just thrillers that are just essential to read near Halloween. One that I always talk about, and it's my favorite book by this author, is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This one is, if you love The Haunting of Hill House, just love kind of haunted houses in general, this is a great book for you. So in this book we have a character named Maggie, and Maggie's all grown up now, but when she was younger, her parents and her lived in this really old type of mansion for a few weeks, and then they left in the middle of the night to never come back. Maggie has no recollection of this because she was 7 at the time, so she has no clue. People say it's haunted. Her father actually wrote a best-selling novel about his time in this house. And so she is kind of, really wondering what's up with this house. Then her father passes away, and he leaves her the keys to this mansion, and she decides to go in once for all and figure out what exactly happened here when I was younger. Why can't I remember? Is this really haunted or not? Or did my dad write a work of fiction and not a real story? So it is very creepy. I loved it. If you love haunted house, this is the great one to read near Halloween. It's not super scary, but again, haunted house wins the day for this one, honestly. If you want something that's not super scary but super atmospheric, Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney is a great book. This is her newest book that just came out in August, and I read this last month. It is the perfect time to read it. I always will recommend this book to read on a stormy night with a cup of hot chocolate under a blanket with a candle. it is that book. So this book is a nod to the famous Agatha Christie's novel, And Then There Were None. If you know the plot of that one, you kind of get the gist of this one. We follow a character named Daisy who goes to her Nana's house for her birthday, and her birthday's on Halloween. And her whole family shows up, and in the strike of midnight on the hour, every hour, one member of her family dies, and they're trying to figure out who did it, what's going on. If you've read Agatha Christie's books, you kind of can tell what's going on, but she puts another spin on this. I really enjoyed it. Again, it takes place like in this kind of old sea house where like the waves will crash up on it and you'll smell the sea, and you'll like, it talks about the sea air and how you're kind of stuck in this house because when the tide goes out, like you're screwed, you can't go anywhere for a day. This is like a dark atmospheric book that just screams Halloween. You know what else screams Halloween? Good old demon possession. My Best Friend Exorcism by Grady Hendrix is perfect for Halloween. It is a book all about a girl that gets possessed by a demon, and not only that, it's like an 80s tribute. So we have so many things because 80s, you know, in the 80s and 90s, horror movies really came into fruition with Michael Myers, Jason, and Freddy Krueger, all of those amazing things. In this book, we follow a character named Abby, and Abby has a best friend named Gretchen. They've been best friends forever. Everything's going great. And then one night, Gretchen gets lost in the woods, and she comes back out of the woods the next day, you know, a little different. Things are happening. She's kind of odd. She's really, you know, kind of dirty. And then all of a sudden she gets better. And what do you know? But Gretchen is possessed by a demon. And what do you have to do to demons? You have to exorcise them. So Abby's on the hunt to do just that. It is a fun book. This is not like super scary in any regards, but Grady Hendrix does has a notion to kind of write disgusting scenes, if you will, like not gory blood, but kind of other disgusting things. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a scene in this book with one character, I was like, disgusting! Ugh, but it's a fun time. If you want a fun time, highly recommend this one. The movie just came out, I watched it. It was an okay adaptation. I don't know if I'd recommend to watch the movie, but the book is A+, love it, perfect for Halloween. Next up, we have Hidden Pictures by Jason Releckley. I forget how to pronounce his author's name. I read this a few months ago, and my immediate thought was, this is perfect to read near Halloween because it's definitely very creepy. So in this book, we have a character named Mallory who has had a lot of problems in the past with substance abuse issues, but she's a lot better now. She's clean, and she gets a job to be the nanny for this great kid in this very affluent neighborhood. And so she goes there and everything's going great at first. Teddy is a great kid, but all of a sudden Teddy starts drawing some pictures. Those first pictures are great. They're like, you know, goats and stuff like that. But then Mallory notices that it starts getting a little bit darker and she's like, what is happening? You know, just him with this weird looking lady like from The Ring. It's creepy. So what's great about this book is that the whole plot is about this kid that's drawing pictures and she's trying to figure out what it is, and then they just get darker and darker. And what I love about it is the fact that there are pictures in it. Like, I highly recommend checking this one out near Halloween. I did not love the ending at all. Like, this book was great for the first 80% of it, and the last 20% really let me down. But what saves it really is the addition of the actual pictures. It really tells the story and really makes it even more creepier than just describing it. So that's why I'm recommending to read it near Halloween, because you get kind of a creepy story about a kid that draws weird things, but you also get to see the drawings. If you want a little bit of Gothic horror for Halloween, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Morano Garcia is great for that. So this one, again, is kind of like a haunted house, but more like a Gothic manor, if you will. So this book takes place in 1950s Mexico, and we have a character named Naomi, and she gets a letter from her cousin who just recently got married saying like, hey, like, I'm not feeling that well. My husband's kind of weird. This house is kind of weird. Things are just weird. And so Naomi's like, you know what, I'll go visit her, see what's going on. And so she goes there to this really old house, like I said, like kind of a Gothic mansion, and she meets her cousin's new husband and his family, and she's just noticing things are a little off. Also, the house is kind of weird, and you can put two and two together of where things are going, and it's a very interesting read. It's not scary, but it's definitely got that kind of Gothic horror vibe going on. Like, if you would like Crimson Peak and things like that, I think you would really like this book. Again, when I think of like Gothic horror and stuff like that, I think of winter, I think of Halloween, aka perfect to read near that time. And if you just want a straight up haunted house, like a scary haunted house, Kill Creek by Scott Thomas will do you no wrong. This is a horror book and it is scary. I will say it does not get scary till like the last 30%, but when it gets scary, it gets scary, at least for me. So in this book, we have a character named Sam who is a horror author. And so he gets invited to this famous kind of haunted house called Kill Creek. And when he gets there, there's a whole bunch of other authors there as well. Like kind of think of like R.L. Stine, middle grade. There's another like kind of erotic horror author there. So it says, what begins as a simple publicity stunt will become a fight for survival. The entity that they have awakened will follow them, torment them, threatening to make them a part of the legacy of Kill Creek. So this book is interesting because, like I said, the action really doesn't take place till like the last 30-40% of the book, but when it does, it does. It's creepy, it's dark, this house is scary, like, ugh, I really enjoyed it. Probably one of my favorite horror books of all time. I love the fact that it's a book about horror authors going to a haunted house. Like, that just really does it for me. Like, it's a perfect book to read near Halloween. If none of these are, this one most assuredly is. Next up, we have the Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. I would dare say any of Simone St. James, I've read 3 of her books so far, are perfect to read near Halloween because she always adds an element of paranormal in her books. So it kind of makes it more Halloween because when you think of Halloween, you think of spooky and paranormal and things like that. So any of her books will do, honestly, but I think one that's great to read near Halloween is the Book of Cold Cases, and this is her latest release. So in this book, we follow like 2 different timelines. We have 1977 in Clear Lake, Oregon. There was this lady killer that murdered a whole bunch of people. And now in 2017, we have Shay, who's a receptionist. She runs this blog called Book of Cold Cases, where, you know, cold cases where they don't get solved. The lady killer was one of them. And so she meets the lady killer, Beth, by chance, and Beth grants her an interview. And so she's like, oh, this is amazing. And so you start tying things together. And what makes it great for Halloween, because like there's rain on the cover. This book is like in a rainy town, like it rains all the time. It's kind of dark, mysterious. It may be the house Beth lives in is kind of haunted. So it's a great one near Halloween. I loved it. I loved all of Simone St. James' books. I highly recommend them for Halloween, but this one in particular because of just the atmosphere it had and the weather it had. Like when I read books about rain and stuff, I think about fall and I think about Halloween. Then we have Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard. I've read this recently and I did not love it, but I do think it's a good book to read near Halloween because it is a book about the makings of a horror movie. So we follow an actress who is not doing so well. She's not getting a lot of castings and she's thinking about quitting being an actress. And then one day she gets a call like, hey, our lead in this horror movie dropped out. Can you be the lead? And she's like, heck yeah, I can. The only problem is she has to leave that day. And so she goes and the filming takes place in this house in the middle of the woods. There's like not a lot of crew members there. She's noticing that it's kind of isolated and things are going kind of odd. So this book could have been a lot more, I think, with it, but the fact that it's a book about like a horror movie being made screams Halloween, so I thought I would mention it. I did not love it, but it takes place in the woods, it's isolated, it's a book about a horror movie, so Halloween on Halloween for you there. So those are all the books that I wanted to talk about that are perfect to read near Halloween. Spooky reads, books that'll get you in the vibe for all of the many like spookiness that October brings. I'm not like the craziest person about Halloween because I don't like scary things. I don't like haunted houses. I don't like going to like scary things for Halloween, things like that. Like, you know, haunted hayrides, haunted houses, you know, walkthroughs. I don't, no. So I don't think any of the books I mentioned today are like gonna really scare you, but they're all give you that little spookiness that is perfect for Halloween. I would love to know what you consider some spooky reads. Please leave them in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video. Bye.